and we've been traveling the world since. It's mainly been through Central and South America, which is actually where I identify as being my home. So 4 years ago, we founded Project World School, and we've been trying to bring this unique experience to others who might not have even considered such a thing before. With Project World School, we have run retreats in like over 10 countries. We've worked with over 60 teenagers, exploring themes of local culture and history. So I guess I could explain, or I could begin by explaining what world schooling is to me. World schooling to me simply means learning from the world around me. I know that sounds like self-explanatory, but that's essentially what it is. Oops, sorry. It's really just about being open to new opportunities. It's really about allowing yourself to grow from these experiences. Thank you. It's about growing from these experiences and really allowing oneself to blossom through travel. World schooling is about saying yes, and this is a philosophy that my mom and I have kind of adapted into our everyday life. We like to say yes to new experiences and new opportunities. It opens so many doors that that might have always remained closed. And this is something that, like, I think anybody can really take on this mindset. And it's such a fantastic thing. And it's a fantastic learning tool as well. Saying yes whenever you can. And finally, world schooling is about trusting that your path will lead you to where you need to be. It's about having trust in the journey and having trust that your destination is the right one. So my intention for this talk was to show you as a grown unschooler and world schooler that yes, world schoolers do learn stuff. Yes, world schoolers can be self-motivated, and world schoolers can be sustainable and provide a real future. And ultimately that, you know, world schooling, it works. So that was kind of my intention with this talk. So one of the parts of the philosophy of world schooling that my mother and we've adapted into our lives is that we don't like to compartmentalize learning. The fact that learning in schools and in formal education settings, the fact that learning is separated into different subjects and broken down and just really broken down and separated, it kind of ruins the whole experience in my opinion. I think that it's insane to compartmentalize learning and to break it down into subjects when learning is life. You know, through life you learn everything that you need to know. So I guess that I could begin and kind of coming at this from a perspective that I don't normally entertain, is one of a traditional schooler. So I guess I could take a bit of time and go over some of the things that I've learned through my life of world schooling and break it down into subjects, which is something that I don't do. So I can start the slides now. So we like to practice contextual learning. Contextual learning and experiential learning are essentially one and the same. We believe that learning from experience is probably the best way to do it. By leading and following like a hands-on kind of experience, that kind of thing remains with you for years after. I can't remember, I mean I did attend school if you guys didn't know. I attended school up until the 3rd grade. And I can tell you, I don't remember the things that I was forced to read and forced to memorize for a test. It wasn't relevant to me, it didn't mean anything to me, I wasn't involved in that project. And by learning through hands-on experiences, by learning through experience itself, that's one way to make your learning so insanely lasting, I believe. So these are some real-life instances of immersive world schooling. We have geography. This is us at the equator in Ecuador. Geology, by visiting many different landscapes and different types of mountains. We have ecology and ecosystems. We have biology. This picture is actually, you can note the face. This is a picture of when we were dissecting cuy in Peru, which is, does anybody know what cuy is?
Guinea pigs.
Guinea pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're delicious.
They're tasty.
They are. So this was firsthand. This was actually a fantastic experience. You know, I will remember this way more than dissecting a frog in biology class. You know, it's kind of like the equivalent of that, except we ate it and it was tasty.
Was that like part of the process, or did you request to do that?
I mean, it's a normal part of the process. Obviously, somebody has to cut up
Right,
the
but
cuy.
they normally involve the like patrons, or
Not necessarily, but we wanted to get involved in this, you know. And
what's in our hands?
oh, I wanted to spare them the details.
Oh, is that intestines?
But those are intestines, yeah. And you see those little pellets in there? I think you guys know what that is. Yeah. We actually, so this was actually on one of our retreats in Peru. We were staying, it was a farm stay with a traditional family that lives in a very traditional way up in a very rural town in Peru called Paruro. And we were actually, this was such an honor to be able to have this experience. Cuy is, well, to you guys it might seem like a pet or it might seem just like a rodent. Cuy is like, it's a delicacy in Peru, and this was a real honor. So the funny thing that I was getting to is that we did this on a retreat, and we had a couple of other teenagers with us, quite a few that were from the States, and some of the teenagers struggled with this process because, as you might imagine, some of them had pets that were guinea pigs. And yeah, so that's that. That's the guinea pig. We have language learning. Here's me in a banana suit next to a dog. Don't really know what that has to do with language learning. We were communicating, perhaps, in a nonverbal way.
Although he looks not so interested.
So cultural studies, you know, viewing art inspired in different countries and seeing the different social implications that art can have. You know, because obviously the perspective of an Ecuadorian artist named Guay Simon is not going to be the same as an artist in the United States, or an artist in Europe, or pretty much in any other country or any other place. And I think that one of the best ways to learn from a culture is actually through their art. And it's through their art because art is a way to find meaning. And in order to understand what is important, what means a lot to a culture, I think, you know, art's an easy way to kind of get a taste of that. We've done a lot of mysticism, studies into mysticism and belief systems. This picture here, this was actually during a despacho ceremony in Peru, which is a blessing to Mother Earth. Yeah, so we've worked with the shaman for years actually, and we always come back to him, and it's just a fantastic experience. And it's really interesting to see how mysticism and belief systems have also kind of changed with the arrival of Catholicism as well, and how when we practice a lot of these mystical beliefs and mystical practices, there's also a taste of the new religion, at least for this region, which is Catholicism. So it's really interesting to see the intermingling of the two. And this was just one example. Politics. We've been in many places, and in some of those places there was political upheaval while we were there. Notably, one notable one was we were in Honduras, actually. We were in Tegucigalpa just a month after the coup had happened. And it was actually really interesting to see it firsthand. It was a very different scene than what was being painted on mainstream media, and it was a different scene than what was being, what it was thought to be by, you know, everybody else in the world. So that's a very unique perspective. Economics, you know, discovering different currencies and different ways of, you know, trading essentially. The markets that I visited in all of Latin America are so vastly different to the markets that I've been to anywhere else in the world. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that as well. Again, we've learned a lot about social movements. One that I can talk about a little bit was, we were in Bolivia, And it was actually really fascinating learning about the growing and thriving feminist movement actually in Bolivia, in a very repressed Catholic country. So, yeah, that's that. Investigation and research. This is actually a photo. We were at, not San Cristobal, Coricancha. That's right. We were at Coricancha in Cusco. And this is this researcher. He's actually a famous researcher. His name is Brian Forrester. And we were with him, and we were assisting recording the angles of the walls. And we were actually hearing firsthand from this alternative researcher what he thought went down in, well, about 2,000, 3,000 years ago. And it's really interesting because while, yes, we get tour guides every once in a while, and we do hear the conventional story, I think the alternative story is also something that needs to be looked into, for sure. So getting both perspectives and learning about how to discern truths from not-so-truths, I think that's also really important. Being able to filter is one of the most important abilities that one can practice and learn in our age of, you know, almost so much excessive information that's available, at least online now, through the internet. So I think the discernment of knowledge is one of the best things that we can practice as modern world scholars. Archaeology, like I just said. We've been to so many ruin sites, too many to count. At least a couple hundred. I said too many to count, but I'm going to try anyways. Maybe 200, and seen over thousands of artifacts. And, you know, at first, when I first started visiting these archaeological sites, I'm not going to lie, I really wasn't interested. It was actually my mom, and this is her passion. You know, she loves this stuff. She loves ancient history, and she loves visiting these ruins. So, you know, when I was younger, a lot of the time she'd be dragging me off to ruins. But after being exposed to them for so long, it feels like second nature to me. And I'm actually really also quite interested in ancient history now, just from always having it around me. So I think that's another really important thing from world schooling, is that it strews. Are you guys familiar with the concept of strewing, of leaving things in the path of your learner? Well, the world does that automatically. The world does that for all of us. It just leaves things in our paths for us to pick up and become interested in, and discover passions that we didn't know we had. So, yeah, I would say I'm passionate about archaeology, and I'm passionate about ancient history now. And I certainly wasn't when I was first exposed to it. So, you know. Botany. I've always been interested in botany, but traveling on the road has been so eye-opening to see all the different ways that plants are grown in different cultures and different countries, and even different plants. Learning about the effects that certain plants can have in a region, and even on the soil, and even on the ecosystem, it's mind-blowing. I love it so much. We've been to farms in tons of different countries, and each one is its own unique experience. So, marine biology. In this photo, we're actually reconstructing a whale skeleton from a whale corpse that had washed up one day on the beach. And again, like, this is another thing. This is literally hands-on. This is something that I'm not going to forget in my entire life. Physical anthropology. In this photo, we worked in this museum in Paracas, where they have these elongated skulls. And we helped document these skulls. We helped document these skulls and photograph them, actually, which was something that had never been done to these skulls before. And we worked with them. I held them in my hands, these 1,000-year-old skulls. And again, like, that's just something that I'll never forget. I'll never forget talking to the museum curator for hours, talking about the history of these things, talking about the implications of them, of, you know, are they human? Who knows? You know, I think that's pretty interesting. History is all around us, especially when we travel. Yeah, every place has its history. You're exposed to so many different things. And, you know, being of service as well is also insanely important. Feeling like you're making a difference in the world is one of the best tools as well to, you know, help maintain a learning experience. To think back and say, yeah, it was a learning experience, and sure, it might have been difficult when I was in the project, but looking back, you know, it's always something that you're going to remember fondly because you know that you helped people in the end. And it might sound kind of selfish to say that, but I think it might have been Gandhi who said himself that, yes, he was selfish, and his reasoning for helping people was because it made him feel good. And you know, I think that's something that's pretty interesting to look at as well. So, and we've got applied arts as well. You can do art anywhere. You do art anywhere. I'm really young here. So, and then I know I said this was like, part of this was academic, but this is the non-academic side. And this is things that you really have a ton of opportunities while traveling to practice. You've got natural learning, life skills, value, and real-world experiences. These are all things, real-world experiences, like everything that you're learning while you're traveling is a real-world experience. And it makes the experience hold so much more weight, I would say. So socializing, how are your kids going to socialize when they're on the road? You know, I'm sure you guys have gotten that question a lot. And the real question is, how are you not going to socialize when you're on the road? You guys know how many people you meet traveling? You meet people everywhere. All you have to do is talk to them. You have to learn, you can learn from them. You can hear their perspectives and expand your own worldview. And socializing can be done everywhere. Tolerance and acceptance. This is crucial when you're inside of cultures that are not your own. Yeah. It's something that you practice on a daily basis, really. Practice patience as well. I remember this. I think this was something like we were waiting in that station for 8-10 hours. Our train wasn't delayed, but you know. Contributing to group efforts. While you're on the road, you are able to plan trips with others. You're able to, I don't know, really just work with others. You're free to do that. Whereas, you know, in a normal schooling environment, I would say like there really isn't that same spirit of group effort. You know, it's something that's it's kind of snubbed out, I would say. Overcoming boredom. This is a huge one. This also goes into practicing patience. Since we left the States, maybe for the first few years on our trip, yeah, I would still struggle with that idea of boredom. And I would come to my mom and say, hey mom, I'm bored, what do I do? And I was always looking for the answer of what to do. But eventually I came to the realization that I was the only one responsible for that answer of what I was doing with my time. That I was the only one that really knew what was important to me and what I should be doing.
How old were you when you felt that?
I would say 13 or 14.
Oh boy.
And I think, you know, honestly, I turned out the better for it. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, actually, in my own personal journey. Becoming adaptable, being on the road, I mean, this is crucial. You have to have this ability. Because plans change. The world is ever fluid, it's constantly moving. And, you know, if you plan every single thing out, well, something is eventually going to change. Things are never going to be exactly as you want them to be. And being okay with that it's crucial. You need to be okay with that. You need to be okay with the fact that, okay, you missed your flight. What now? You know, figuring out what you can do in these situations and practicing that ability, it's really, I know maybe it doesn't sound like it, but it's a literal lifesaver in a lot of situations. Real-world problem solving, this also goes into adaptability, being able to figure out a solution to the many problems that you're going to face in life. Money conversion, budgets, and money management, and this also goes into the practicing of maths as well. And you know, I know, okay, sure. I know that like if I wanted to be a scientist, if I wanted to be an architect, then yeah, I would probably do my fair share of studying to maths itself. But as a traveler and as a writer, actually, this is essentially all the math that I need to be able to do. I'm capable of converting money. I'm capable of figuring out how much I have to spend on a daily basis. That's about it, you know. What am I really going to need calculus for on the road? Am I going to be doing my spreadsheets in calculus? No way. And finally, we have worldviews, and this is something that we talk about a lot as well. Your worldview is something that is your own unique experience. But that doesn't mean you can't expand upon it, and you can't learn from others and take pieces and bits and bobs from other people's worldviews and add it onto your own. And I would say that, like, expanding your worldview is the single greatest thing that you can do to grow as a person. And this is something that you do every day on the road. On the road, it makes you question these ideas that you were brought up with. It makes you question things that you always thought to be true. And it just makes you rethink everything. And that's insanely important. So that's it. Those are, if we're talking about from an academic perspective, what I have learned. If you want to break everything down into subjects, those were really just a few, as an example. But the thing is, it's so much more than that. You put all of those things together, and it makes up this experience that we all know as life. So, that's it. I was actually recently this year, just a few weeks ago actually, I was accepted to the Global Youth Summit in Switzerland. And this is my video application that I'm going to show you, but essentially it's a summit and it's a conference kind of like this for youths, for people between the age of 18 and 23. And out of 3,600 applicants, only 60 were selected, of which I was one. And yeah, so I'm going to be going and I'm going to be bringing the perspective of world schooling and unschooling and non-hierarchical education to people who might not have ever heard of this kind of perspective. So I'd like to be kind of bringing this to other people and bring this to other change makers like myself, who are hopefully capable of, you know, making the world a better place. So yeah, so this is it. Play like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
My name is Miro Siegel, and I'm 17, but I'll be 18 in April. And the issues that I'm working on are redefining education through cultural and experiential learning, and creating a more peaceful, compassionate world.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you need AV stuff.
We don't have the wires thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
we do have
do we?
this. Will this do it?
is there a speaker on the projector?
I don't know. It's only a 2-minute video. If you guys want to get closer, I don't know.
Does it work if you're moving up to it or not?
Not. That's what I was
We were
just
just
doing.
trying.
Unless you
It's
can
all
turn the volume up on the.
Then you get into feedback.
We have a lot of feedback, yeah. It's alright.
Where's the speaker?
I made it now.
These are the best.
Speaker on top of the.
Can you talk about what you're saying there? Can you talk over the mic?
I don't think it's gonna work.
No, probably not.
Speaker on this thing. You know what speaker is?
The speaker.
Well, I mean, the video's online.
Yeah.
If you guys are
We'll
interested.
try it one more time.
That's fine.
If not, we'll just take questions.
We can hear.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, we can hear up here, they just have to move forward.
I've been traveling for the last 8 years.
But now we can't see.
Oh, that's the
Are you playing it?
Yeah, I don't know
It
why.
sounds like it's
I
coming
think
out
it's
of the.
coming out
Is that a
here.
projector?
It
I
is
think
coming
it
out.
is.
Sounds like it.
That's right. If it's HDMI cable, that's what's going to happen.
My name is Miro Siegel, and I'm 17, but I'll be 18 in April. And the issues that I'm working on are redefining education through cultural and experiential learning, and creating a more peaceful and compassionate world through travel. I've been traveling for the last 8 years, living in many different cultures and learning from my surroundings. I'm an unschooler. In other words, I'm self
drive their education through experiential learning. I call it worldschooling. I feel worldschooling is important for two reasons. One, to empower the student to adapt a self-directed learning mindset, and two, to create a more peaceful planet. 4 years ago, my mother and I started a business called Project World School, with the intent of bringing young adults from different parts of the world to authentic cultural experiences, build bridges, do volunteer work, and provide space to experience the world as a safe place, outside of their comfort zones and within community. Since then, I've co-created these experiences for over 50 teams, all who have been profoundly changed as a result. I'm working directly with the next generation of learners, helping to redefine what global education is. Worldschooling instills a sense of belonging,
That was Kui. Yeah.
which fosters the idea that all world systems are interconnected and interdependent. Through worldschooling, we expand our worldviews, encouraging us to celebrate our differences with compassion and value our similarities with pride. How do I think I can change things in my community? This is a question that we explore with every participant in Project World School. In community, we facilitate participants to practice reflection, live and learn collaboratively, and give back to the community through service. When teens return to their home communities, they've experienced to better advocate for the change they want to see locally because they've experienced the power of collaboration. My future? I plan on continuing my work with Project World School, advocate for world schooling, and do my part to create a more friendly planet. I want to become a global change maker to connect with other change makers and revolutionaries, and to learn about how others are doing their part to change the world.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm open to taking questions now if anybody has any. So.
You guys seem to have some amazing experiences. How are you finding them? Because it's hard to find sometimes in a new area when you're new to the language.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, for the most part, we traveled through Central and South America, which, you know, we were kind of blessed because it chose just the one language. So for the first 4 or 5 years of our trip, I was heavily exposed to Spanish, and I eventually picked it up. I'm fluent in Spanish now. But over this last year, actually, we were traveling in many places with many different languages. We were in Thailand, we were in Greece, well, South Africa was English, but we were also in Indonesia. And I would have to say that, things can be difficult for sure. The hardest part about traveling in these countries was I wanted to speak to the people and I wanted to learn so much, but there was definitely the language barrier. So that was the hardest part of communicating. But, you can always find a way to connect with people. The language barrier might seem like it makes it difficult, and it really does make it difficult, but there always are ways to do it. Now, what exactly those ways are, I don't know. I don't really exactly have the answers for you, but I would have to say, like, how I'm finding these experiences, I love my life, yeah.
So, one thing that I want to do better with our family and ourselves is it seems like you guys have a lot of deep, rich experiences inside of cultures that, I feel like sometimes when we hit up these places, we just kind of skip on the surface and we don't really get deep into, some wonderful experiences like that. So, do you have any tips or how do you get into these authentic, rich experiences? Because I don't know if I'm not looking deep enough or.
Well, I think the obvious answer that I can think of is, we've traveled so slowly. In some countries, we like to spend a minimum of a month in one country. And in Peru, we were stuck there for on and off for 3 years because we just kept coming back and kept immersing ourselves in the culture. But I think it's kind of like this change in mindset. Once you go from having a very defined trip and knowing that you're flying out on this day and you're flying home on this day, to going to an indefinite trip where we figure, we're on the road, we play by our own rules. There's no reason why we shouldn't spend however much time as we want in a place to really immerse ourselves, if that's what we want to do. So definitely travel slowly, and if you only have a little bit of time, if you only have 2 weeks to a month, maybe I would recommend, instead of having the classic tourist mindset, which is, I have to go to a place and I have to see everything, maybe pick one place that you'd be really interested in immersing yourself in, and really make an effort and just go to that one place and stay there, and live as if you were a visiting local and not a tourist. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So, can I ask you like 3 questions? I have a bunch of them. One, would you, since you're 18, right?
Almost.
Almost.
2 days.
Oh no.
2 days.
Do you want to? Are you gonna stay with your mom, or go out on your own? The second one is, if you had the choice to travel the United States or the rest of the world. It seems like a silly question, but somebody who comes from the U.S. who wants to see some other things, what would you prefer? More experiences outside of it, whatever. And 3, where'd you get your pants?
I'd be happy to answer the question. Well, I got these pants in Thailand, so that's a classic answer. I've gotten so many cool things from Thailand. Have you guys seen me with the really pointy hat?
Yeah.
That's also from Thailand. So some of my favorite items. As an answer to the first question, it'll be soon. The thing is too, I think that especially coming from or having an American perspective, because obviously we are Americans, in the American culture, I would say there's like this ridiculous idea that just because somebody is 18, they have to separate themselves from their family.
Right.
And it's almost as if in the United States there's like this race to independence, and parents are so eager to push their kids out of the house when maybe that's not what's best for them. So, I mean, when it feels right, and if it feels right, I'm going to be taking a few trips on my own this year. But, little by little, baby steps. So, yeah. So, and especially after traveling in Latin America for so long, there's this different sense of value that is assigned to family. Whereas in the States, I feel like maybe that's forgotten for what's best for a person's career or what's best for somebody's lifestyle. Whereas in most of these Latin American countries that you visit, family is like one of the most important things. It's the cornerstone to a lot of these cultures. So I've learned a lot from that as well. And I apologize. What was the second question again?
I think you got them all.
U.S.
The U.S. or
U.S.
Oh, U.S. I mean, my opinion is biased because I've been out of the U.S. for so long.
Sure.
But I would definitely say, if you're comfortable with doing it, and if you think that it would be like a healthy stretch for you to go to places outside of the U.S., then definitely do it and have an experience with something that you're so unfamiliar with. But if you think that a trip within the U.S. is best for you and your family, then by all means, go for it. And you know what, you guys have probably traveled within the United States more than I have. I really haven't traveled within the States all too much. So, at some point I would like to go back to the States, and I would like to travel and really experience it with kind of with more time, and the freedom to be able to do that.
Sure.
But definitely outside the States for me, for now. Anybody else? Okay.
How do you maintain friendships with other individuals?
Yeah, okay, so she asked how I maintain friendships with other individuals. And I definitely think that, living within this age and having grown up within this age, the internet is so crucial to that question. I stay online and I keep in touch with pretty much all of my friends online when I'm not in a place. And that can result in some really late nights when I'm up talking to a friend of mine who's halfway across the world, and I have to stay up until 4 or 5 in the morning to talk to them. It happens. But definitely the internet is the easiest way and by far the most efficient way of staying in touch with people. I couldn't maintain all these relationships that I have without it. So. Go ahead.
I find that you have more friendships with people, Americans or native English speakers, or do you have a lot of friends in the countries where you're living and traveling?
Definitely both. She asked if it's easier to make friendships with people who are native English speakers or people who are living within the host country. And my answer to that is pretty much both. I have a lot of friends that are Peruvians that live in Peru, a lot of Ecuadorian friends as well. But of course, just because English is my native language, and it's the way that I can most easily express myself, that also makes it easier for me to form a connection with a native English speaker. So I really try my hardest to make friendships within the country that I'm staying in, and have that be really meaningful to me. So both.
I may have missed this, but were you always world schooled, like from a wee tot?
Okay, I think everybody did. But I was not always world schooled. I attended I attended Montessori school up until, well, the equivalent to the second grade. There were no grades in the Montessori school. And then I attended a public school from grades 3 to, it was 4, that's right. And then after that, it was actually kind of funny. We really didn't have any plans for education for that first year, because when we initially took off, we only intended to be gone for 1 year, and it's been 8 years since then. But it was only after the first 8 months, and after we made the decision to make this an indefinite lifestyle choice, that we decided that, well, really, she decided that, oh, maybe I have to figure out something for my son, We definitely thought that 1 year travel would absolutely destroy 5th grade, and what 5th grade had to offer. But after making an indefinite choice, we had to figure something out, and eventually we discovered a term called unschooling, and we discovered that we were actually already doing it and that it was already working. So that was really when our transformation to, traditional schoolers to unschoolers happened. So, yeah.
Did you ever go through a phase where you were like jealous of kids that went to regular school when you were younger?
Never. I would say maybe when you see that in unschoolers, I would say most commonly when I see that in unschoolers, it's probably because the unschoolers have never been to school. They don't really know what it's like. But having gone to school for, it's true, having gone to school for 4 or 5 years, even longer than that, 7, 8 years, I never want to go back. I still don't. I don't want anything to do with it. So.
What about when you were, you're talking about the political atmosphere changing, witnessing some changes in some of the countries you were around. How did that make you feel to see some of these, and did you take part in any of it? So I saw that you still had some very up-close pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question. So she's asking if I ever participated in any of these political marches or any of these political changings that we've seen in the countries. And for the most part, we like to visit places, at least when it comes to when there's obvious change and there's obvious upheaval in a place's systems. We like to take on the role of the anthropologist, which is to simply observe and not to judge and not to say, well, that's wrong and you shouldn't be doing that, or that's right, and simply to observe. And yeah, we have marched in a few of these things, and we have really had this authentic experience and this first-hand experience with something that you might only see in articles and on the news. But through that, you're able to form your own unique opinion of these things. And I guarantee I don't view the Honduras coup, for example, in the same way that anybody in this room might. So, hopefully that answers the question. Go ahead.
Okay, as you talk, I'm thinking, and it's not a clearly formulated question, and perhaps it's not even fair to ask.
Okay.
Because I'm asking you to look into a perspective that's not your own.
Okay.
So it's asking you to imagine a little bit. You're coming from a dominant culture into a third world culture, or a not dominant culture. My experience was actually going from a third world culture to a dominant culture, as a Mexican living in Canada. So I'm curious how you think that that might be different, or how you might see that you're perceived, because I know you're very sensitive, because we've talked about this. How that plays out and how you actually move in that third world situation.
Well, if this gives you any insight, when I'm in Spanish-speaking countries and people ask me where I'm from, I tell them I'm Peruvian. I would rather identify as being Peruvian than as American. Yeah, I think, again, my experience might be literally the exact opposite as yours. And it's almost kind of like this journey has resulted in, okay, obviously I can't completely shed everything that I was, grown with and everything that I had learned when I was a child. Obviously I'm always going to be pretty American. But I think this journey has resulted in shedding and losing a lot of that as well, and trying to pick up little bits and bobs, like I said, from different cultures as well. I don't know. I think, if anything, too, traveling like this, especially through predominantly third world countries, it's kind of resulted in almost like a disavowalment of dominant countries, as you put it, and kind of like this disgust, because when you're in other countries that aren't necessarily as privileged and aren't necessarily as well off, you kind of question things, and you look at where you're from and you say, well, that doesn't seem right. But while you're in it, and while you're inside, for example, while you're in the States, and even when I go back to visit, sometimes it's hard to see. But you can't see these things while you're inside of it. You can only really have this perspective once you've been outside of it for a certain amount of time. Because these things just seem so normal to you. Why wouldn't they be that way? You were raised in that culture, they make sense that way. But it just makes you question these things. And I hope that answers the question, kind of. But, okay. Yeah.
So, as you approach the magical age of 18, right, how often do you get asked what you plan to do with the rest of your life and what you felt you would ask?
I get asked that question very often. I don't know. I always tell people that I don't like to plan that far into the future. Yeah, exactly. And even though to them that future might be 2 days away, in my case, my answer's the same. I don't like to think that far ahead. I don't like to plan out the rest of my life. It goes back into that adaptability that I've kind of, through this lifestyle, I've almost been forced to take this on. And I can't really live with a set out plan for the rest of my life. I can't see that happening. Whenever people will ask, they're like, okay, but really, what are you going to do? I tell them, all right, I don't know. Look, maybe I'll travel around for the next 10 years. I'll continue doing work with Project World School. I want to write poetry. I want to listen to music. I want to see more countries. I want to experience more cultures. And that's about as in-depth as I'll go.
Inspire people.
Inspire people. Thank you. Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you because it's a year and a half since me and my friend we went to a conference in New Jersey, and it was your talk with Lainey. It was this one, the presentation, which turned us both into, okay, so tomorrow we don't have to go to school anymore.
Oh, really?
When I listen to you, I am so deeply touched, and I really hope that my kids will turn at least that beautiful soul like you are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't even know what to say after that.
You're amazing.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Or okay.
Seems silly to follow up with that. I'll get myself together. A lot of children have a need, perhaps, of a sense of home, rhythm, familiarity.
Stability.
Stability. And I know your mom and family units can provide a lot of that. What kind of rhythms or things that you maybe valued of giving you that sense of home, or did you ever feel like you even needed that?
That's a really interesting question. And I kind of have to rethink that question every time anybody asks me where I live. And I tell them, well, I don't have a permanent house, and my permanent house looks like 2 suitcases and a few bags in whichever room we're staying in at the time. But my home, that's something completely different. I would say my home is Peru, my home is Mexico, my home is Greece, my home is many of the countries that we visited in that I have left a little bit of myself and also gained a bit of myself from. And I think that, home is such a complicated topic for humans. Especially people that have lived in such a stationary way for the majority of their life. To essentially just become a nomad, it raises so many questions. And, I don't know. I'd really have to, that's a really, intricate one. I'd have to really think about that. I think all the stability that I've never ever needed personally in our journey has been more than fulfilled by having a parent that is always there. And I think that's really important. Before we left the States, I would always tell my mom that she never spent any time with me because she was always working, and she was afraid that she was missing out on my childhood. And going from that experience into having a parent that was always there, that was always engaged, that was always active, I think that was more than I could have ever asked for. So.
I think I could sit with you for a year and just ask you questions. But I would love to know how, not your personal evolution within just by yourself, but I would love to know where your relationship was between the two of you, and then how it has evolved through this massive journey.
Sure. So I would say our relationship has evolved, like I said, in so many ways. We were always kind of close. We were always really close, actually, even when she was working, even when I didn't get to spend time with her because I was going to school. But after we left on our trip, and like I said, having a parent that's always there, that's always engaged, that's always interested to hear what you have to say, that's always empowering you. I don't know. I would say we have a bond, this closeness that, it's unthinkable. It's, I don't really know what more to say after that. For the past 8 years, essentially, we've spent 24/7. We spend a lot of time together. And I think that that's something that a lot of parents don't get the opportunity to do with their children. And I think that's really important. Just spend as much time as you can, active, engaged. And when I say that, you could be spending time with your kids, but if you're not there, you're not there. You have to be engaged, you have to be active. So I think, I don't know, I don't really know how to explain our relationship.
Thank you.
Can I say one more?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Sorry, I don't have a question, but I just had to say this. Before coming here, my wife has pushed me into this so hard. Sorry. My name's super choked up. Before all this, I was so American. I was in the Army. I fought in Iraq. I worked in a mine.
Thank you.
Yep. I drove a semi-truck. I was, I did not drink Bud Light, but I did. I was American. So, but coming, I just had to say, I'm 29 and I don't know, you guys are amazing. So, you know,
Thank you. Okay, well I guess that's it. That's how we wrap up this presentation. So thank you all for hearing what I have to say, and thank you for the questions.